Valentine's Day is just around the corner. If you're like me, then you probably haven't gotten your cards done yet. But don't worry, I have 5 quick Valentine's cards that you can make today using items from your stash. Let's get into it. Welcome back to the Victoria Marie YouTube channel. I'm Victoria, and on this channel, I feature all things paper crafting, scrapbooking, card making, and everything in between. If you like that type of thing, hit the subscribe button and then click that little bell so that YouTube will let you know when a new video pops up here on my channel. Today, I've got 5 really quick and easy cards that you can make just in time for Valentine's using items from your stash. Did you hear me? I said from your stash. You don't have to go buy anything. Let's get into it. We're starting with card number 1, which is inked and embossed design. And just to clarify, there's actually 4 cards in this video, not 5. I misspoke in that intro. So let's get to the 4 cards. So for this first card, you want to grab some type of sentiment. It can be a metal die or a stamp. Also an embossing folder if you have one around. And I grabbed this one from Park Lane from Joann's. And then I have 3 colors of Distress Oxide ink, which, by the way, all of the available product that I use today is linked in the description so you can check it out. I cut a white cardstock panel down to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I also have a folded card base. Say that fast 10 times. First up, you're going to ink up your panel, and this can be any combination of inks that you have. What works well for this is if you use an ink that is blendable. So I'm using Distress Oxide. There's other types of inks you can use if you don't have a Distress Oxide ink. Use what you have that's a blendable ink. I'm going to blend out in 3 colors using my blender brushes. And there we go. We have that blended background. Now to add some texture and dimension, I'm going to take this embossing folder. And this is the first time I'm using it. I purchased it months ago. And so now I am finally going to pull it out of my stash and put some good use to it. I'm going to go ahead and load up my paper inside that embossing folder, and then I'm going to run it through my die cutting machine. I love this technique because it's high impact and it doesn't require a whole lot of work to achieve it. And there we go. We have that ink blended embossed panel. Good to go. I'm going to go ahead and trim this down just so I can have a nice border around that panel. And then this panel, I don't quite remember the size of it, is going to be adhered to the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch panel. There we go, good to go. Next up, I'm going to add the sentiment. So I'm going to grab this die set. This is by Kathy Zielski from Simon Says Stamp. And what I'm going to do is cut out part of that sentiment using some scraps of glitter cardstock that I have in my stash. This can be anything. This can be cardstock, paper, or different color cardstock, and be other substrates of textured paper, just to add a little bit of interest to the card. I'm also going to cut out the shadow layer as well, and I'm going to do this 3 times from white cardstock, just scraps that I have, and this is a great way to use up those scraps. And the reason why I'm doing this is because I want to stack all 3 of those die cut pieces so I have a little bit of dimension to this card and the sentiment, since it is rather one-dimensional. I'm going to stack all those up and then finish that out with the glitter die cut that says Love You. And I'm glad that I chose glitter because this does elevate the card a little bit. Now, once that's done, absolutely beautiful, I'm going to go ahead and adhere it to the card, but then I decide, you know what, there's something else that I want to do with this card. So as I'm thinking about it, I'm going to go ahead and adhere that to the card base and then figure out the positioning of the sentiment. And as I'm getting ready to glue this down, I thought, you know what, why don't I add a little heart to the top of it? So I go back into my stash and I grab a die set. This is from Scrapbooking Cards Today. I grab that solid heart, cut that out, again using some scraps of that glitter paper from Die Cuts with a View, and then I stack it with some white cardstock, and there we go, a simple inked embossed card that can be paired with a Valentine treat and given to a loved one. Card number 2 is washi tape. If you're like me, then you probably have tons of washi tape in your stash, so why don't you grab a few rolls and try this out. First up, you're going to grab some washi tape in various colors. Now I'm sticking with this pink color palette, but I also grabbed a metallic washi as well because I want to add a little bit of sparkle to the card. Also, if you have it, grab a set of nesting dies. I'm using these heart nesting dies from Tonic. And I also have this stamp set that has a lot of sentiments and a cute banner, but I'm actually not going to use it. I'm going to use something different for this card design. So you want to grab some supplies that are maybe similar to this to create this effect. What I want to do is take those nesting dies. I'm going to grab one of the hearts, and I'm going to cut the heart out from the middle of this panel. And the panel is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And I'm going to audition a few of the heart sizes because I don't want the heart too big where I don't have a frame around the heart. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that out of the middle of the panel, the top middle of the panel rather, and I have that solid heart that I could save, or I could have applied washi tape to that heart and then of course adhered it to the back of the outline of the heart. But I decided instead that I want to create just this washi tape background using some scraps so that I know it fits nicely behind the heart. And then I also didn't know how I was going to ultimately pop up that panel. Spoiler alert, I just adhere it flat to the 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch panel that doesn't have the heart cut out of it. So what you'll do is you'll take your washi tape and you can position it however you want to, horizontal, vertical. I am actually doing my washi tape on a diagonal just to give it a little bit of flair. So once I apply the washi tape to this cardstock scrap, I'm going to trim off the excess pieces, and what I'm doing is I'm bringing over that card panel to see how that washi tape looks and making sure that I have enough so that it fills up that heart outline. Once that's done, I'm going to go ahead and trim up that excess washi, and again, you can use any color combination that you want for this particular project. And once that's all trimmed up, it's now time to adhere it to the card panel. Now I'm checking to see to make sure that I have the washi tape in the position that I want so I can see all of the designs through that outline heart, and I'm going to adhere everything together. Now once this is done, I decided that that heart looks a little plain, so I want to jazz it up a bit. So I'm going to take 2 of the nesting dies in different sizes. I'm going to put the smaller nesting die inside of the larger one, trim that out using some glitter cardstock from Die Cuts with a View, run that through my die cutting machine, and what that's going to do is create a frame for my heart. Now I'm using glitter cardstock mainly because it's what I had around and I had a lot of scraps of it, so I wanted to use it up, but you can use any other substrate to create this frame. You can even stack it up if you want a little bit more dimension as well by cutting more frames and then gluing them together for a dimensional look. Once that's in place, I'm going to go ahead and adhere this to the card base, and at this point I'm going to add some dimension and we're good to go. Now I need a sentiment. So I'm going to reach into my stash, I'm going to grab this stamp set from LA Studio, and it has a sentiment that says love you. And I'm going to use some black ink and I'm just going to stamp that sentiment right below the heart. And my idea for this card was just to keep it clean and simple as possible. Once the sentiment is in place, I'm going to go ahead and attach the entire panel to a card base that's 4 1/4 by 5.5, and we are going to call this card done. I love the added shine of that washi tape, the metallic washi tape, the colors with the pink washi, and of course that glitter frame. Next up is card number 3. This is a mask design, very super easy to do. What you'll need is a stamp with some type of repetitive image on it. I'm going to use this large stamp by Hero Arts. I also have a 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card panel, and I already have my sentiment made from the last project. I actually made 2 of those, and then some ink of some sort that you can blend with. What you want to do is take your panel and you're going to mask off the area of where you do not want the ink. And so for this design, I'm going to do a diagonal band across the panel. And of course, you can position this however you want. To do this, I'm going to use some low tack adhesive paper, or masking paper rather. And I'm going to mask off the part of my card panel that I don't want ink to go. You can also use some extra cardstock, scrap cardstock if you have it, computer paper, washi tape, whatever is going to be low tack and will peel off nicely from your panel without ripping it, and also serve as a mask. Once that's in place, I am ready to ink up. I'm going to grab some 3 distress colors, distress oxide inks. Of course, this could be any blendable ink that you want. You can even do direct pad to paper if you want to as well. That's a really fun technique. And I'm going to go sort of in this pink to orange to yellow order on this card panel. I think that gives it a nice effect. Now, after I ink this up, I'm going to leave it and transfer it to my stamp positioner. If you have one of these, this is perfect use for it. If not, you can hand stamp. But what you want to do is get a stamp that has some type of repetitive image on it, or you can take a single stamp and then just add some stamping details where the inked portion of the card panel is. I'm going to go ahead and load up this cling stamp. This is a red rubber stamp, and I noticed that I need to take out the inside portion of my stamp positioner here. This is a MISTI tool. So I'm going to reposition my card panel so that my red rubber cling stamp will fit right inside my MISTI. Now what I want to do is ink up the stamp, and I'm only going to ink it up in the portion where it's going to be stamped on the blended part of my panel. And of course, I'm alternating the colors based on the order that they're presented on the card panel. I'm going to go ahead and close that up, and I'll actually have to ink this a few times. Sometimes it's kind of hard with these larger stamps to get a really good impression. I'm going to bring in my stamp press tool and kind of give it a little bit more pressure, and then eventually I get the image stamped the way that I want it. And what I'm doing is this tone-on-tone stamping with all 3 of these colors. You can use 3 colors, 4 colors, 1 color. It's completely up to you, and of course any color palette that you desire. So I'm going to ink that up again. I'm going to press that down. And then of course, through the magic of masking, you'll just peel off your mask to reveal your stamped image. And look how beautiful that is with the ink blended background, with the stamping on top, the tone on tone color. Again, you can use a single stamp for that, or a type of stamp that I use, like a background stamp that has a repetitive design. I'm going to use this nesting die here that's going to cut out my panel so I can have about 1/8 of an inch around my card panel. I'm going to run that through my die cutting machine, and then of course once that's cut out, I'm going to add some foam adhesive and adhere that to a panel that's cut 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. The cool thing about this design is you literally can use any type of ink that you have in your stash that's nice and blendable. You can also use any type of stamp, whether it's a stamp with a large pattern or just a single stamp. I'm going to bring in that sentiment that I made earlier, and I'm using a glue pen to add some adhesive, liquid adhesive, to the back of that sentiment. Again, that's stacked up with that beautiful gold glitter pattern, or gold glitter cardstock for the Love You sentiment. All of that's going to be adhered to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch base. I just love the way that looks. It's so clean, so sleek. And then I add just some small gems just to add a little bit more sparkle, and this clean and simple card is complete. Our last card is an oldie but a goodie technique, a one panel wonder. All you'll need for this is your favorite stamp and any type of image that represents a Valentine's theme or something closely related to it. You're also going to grab some inks. I'm going to choose 3 Distress Oxide ink colors. You can use whatever ink you have. I'm taking a simple card base, and this is going to be for a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card, and I'm masking off the left-hand side because I'm going to do some repetitive stamping using these stamps. Now, this stamp set is from Ali Edwards, and it's actually big enough to create like scrapbook pages with, but you can also create cards with it. So I'm just going to randomly stamp using these 3 inks that you see here, and of course, again, I do have the products listed in the description below. And I'm switching up colors, so I'm stamping about 3 times with each stamp, and I kind of flub a little bit because there's kind of an open white space there at the top. It kind of creates some trap space, and I'm going to remove that here in just a moment. So you'll just do repetitive stamping, simple. Grab your sentiment and position that right on your card. I'm using this I Love You sentiment from scrapbook.com. I'm going to ink that up using some black ink. Of course, you can use whatever ink that you want, but I wanted that sentiment to really stand out, and I'm covering up my flub as well. I'm going to stamp that to the top of the card. I'm also going to bring in a smaller sentiment that I think says Forever and Ever, and just stamp that right under that large sentiment. I'm going to pull off that masking tape to reveal my one panel wonder. Your one panel wonder can also just be a separate panel if you don't want to mess up your card base, which is absolutely fine. And with that, this card is done. You can literally bang out a bunch of these and send them off quickly to your loved ones. Now, I love this technique so much, so I created another card, and I just positioned the stamps a little bit differently on the second card. And with that, the one panel wonder is done. Let me know what you think about these quick, fast cards in the comment section. I hope you're inspired to create a little Valentine something for the people in your life using product from your stash. And if you're looking for more card making inspiration, check out the videos that just popped up here on screen. I'll see you in the next one.